Okay, this is the second salt preparation core practical you guys need to be aware of. This is preparing a pure dry sample of lead 2 sulfate. So, a bit simpler than the last method I show you. This one requires a few less steps as well. So first thing you do is you add a set volume of lead 2 nitrate to a solution of sodium sulfate. Both are solutions. If you remember from your solubility rules, nitrate-based salts are incredibly soluble, so even lead 2 nitrate will be soluble and dissolve in water, and sodium sulfate also soluble. So we add our two solutions together here, and you can see that a solid is suddenly formed. Why? Well, this is a precipitation reaction, and a precipitation reaction means that when two solutions react together, one of the products is an insoluble solid. Now, looking at the equation below, we can see which one that is. So the soluble lead nitrate reacts with the soluble sodium sulfate to form insoluble solid lead sulfate. That's our white solid appearing here, floating in suspension, and also another soluble product, which is sodium nitrate. So the key next step will be to separate the insoluble solid from the remaining solution. We do that using filtration. So we filter, and this time we're actually going to collect the solid lead sulfate. So we filter and collect the insoluble lead sulfate. Why? Well, because the insoluble lead sulfate will be left behind as the residue on the filter paper. The filtrate will be all of the soluble reagents and reactants and products flowing through into the filtrate. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this around and carry on. So, on the next stage, on the next side of the page, we have the next step, which is to wash the salt we've collected, the lead sulfate, with distilled water, probably several times to be thorough. Why are we doing this? Why are we washing this residue? Well, there are probabilities that some of those soluble reactants or products may well be clinging to those solid particles. You might have drips of silver nitrate, lead nitrate, or even sodium sulfate just sticking and clinging to these solid particles. So by washing several times, we wash through those soluble reactants and products. They run through into the remaining filtrate. We collect more filtrate, in other words, and we're just making sure that there's no soluble impurities like the reactants or products left on our solid salt we want to collect, our lead sulfate. Final step then is to try and remove any last water and get a pure dry sample of lead sulfate. So we take our lead sulfate, probably place on a few pieces of filter paper, leave it in a warm place like possibly an oven or essentially just a warm area to dry out. Again, why? This allows the remaining water which might be stuck or clinging to that lead sulfate to evaporate, leaving us with a pure dry sample of lead 2 sulfate. Much simpler method there. Hope that makes sense. Thank you for listening.